In the turbulent political landscape of the United States, the relationship with China is increasingly becoming the focal point of foreign policy strategies. China is not only a major trading partner, but also America's top strategic rival, demanding different approaches from future leaders. With the upcoming presidential election, two prominent candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, are presenting opposing visions on how the United States should deal with the world's most populous nation. Kamala Harris, with her flexible style, emphasizes dialogue and international cooperation. Meanwhile, Donald Trump continues to demonstrate a tough and unpredictable stance in trade and security policies. This article will delve into comparing the differences and similarities in the approaches of the two candidates, thereby helping us better understand the foreign policy strategic choices that the United States may pursue in the future. Although Kamala Harris and Donald Trump represent opposing parties in the American political landscape, as candidates for the highest leadership position of a united nation, they share several significant common views on U.S.-China relations. These similarities reflect a widespread consensus in American political circles about the challenges posed by China's global rise. Below are the main areas where the two candidates agree. A. China, top strategic rival. Both Harris and Trump view China as one of the most significant challenges to the United States' global position. This perspective reflects a widespread consensus in American politics about the growing threat that China poses to U.S. national interests, including in the economic, technological, military, and geopolitical spheres. This awareness has led both candidates to propose policies aimed at countering China's rise, although there are differences in their approaches. B. Commitment to protecting Taiwan. Both candidates express support for Taiwan, though the degree and manner of expression differ significantly. Harris, following the Biden administration's line, strongly commits to maintaining stability and peace in the Taiwan Strait, while emphasizing the importance of adhering to the U.S. historical commitments to Taiwan. Trump, on the other hand, also expresses support for Taiwan, but simultaneously makes controversial and unpredictable statements about the possibility of U.S. military intervention in case of conflict. This creates uncertainty about U.S. policy towards Taiwan in the event of Trump's re-election. C. Priority on economic competition. Both Harris and Trump emphasize the importance of economic competition with China, but with distinctly different approaches and strategies. Harris supports a multilateral approach, focusing on enhancing U.S. competitiveness through investments in research, development, and education, while promoting cooperation with allies to address challenges from China. In contrast, Trump advocates for a more unilateral and assertive approach, including imposing tariffs, restricting investments, and applying economic sanctions against China. This difference reflects the importance of the economic factor in U.S.-China relations and its profound influence on U.S. foreign policy. D. Focus on the Indo-Pacific region. Both candidates emphasize the strategic importance of the Indo-Pacific region in dealing with China's expanding influence. This reflects the significant geostrategic shift of the U.S. from the Middle East to Asia-Pacific over the past decade. Harris supports strengthening existing alliances and building new partnerships in the region, while promoting U.S. military and diplomatic presence. Trump, although with a different approach, also emphasizes the importance of this region and proposes measures to counter China's growing influence, including enhancing military presence and promoting bilateral trade agreements. Despite significant similarities, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump still demonstrate clear differences in their approach to U.S.-China relations. These differences reflect not only their personal political philosophies, but also represent the distinct policies and plans of the Democratic and Republican parties in developing the United States and shaping the nation's global position. This diversity in approaches creates a complex picture of the future of U.S.-China relations, depending on the outcome of the upcoming election. Below are the main differences in the foreign policies of the two candidates towards China. A. On military and security. Harris pursues a more flexible strategy, focusing on dialogue and diplomacy to reduce tensions. She particularly emphasizes the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, while committing to support Taiwan's self-defense capabilities within the framework of the U.S. One China policy. In contrast, Trump often displays a stronger and more unpredictable attitude. He has previously suggested the possibility of not defending Taiwan and using tariffs as a strategic tool. Trump's approach, with a tendency to pressure and threaten in relations with China, could lead to tensions and instability in the region. On economy and trade, Harris emphasizes cooperation with allies and creating economic pressure on China, but does not prioritize trade sanctions. This approach reflects a multilateral strategy and focuses on building alliances to deal with China. In contrast, Trump proposes tougher measures such as imposing tariffs, economic sanctions, and pursuing an America First strategy, creating direct economic impacts on U.S.-China relations. Trump tends to use economic tools as a means to pressure China, which could lead to trade tensions and negative impacts on the global economy. C. On human rights. Harris demonstrates determination in protecting human rights in China, especially issues related to Hong Kong and Xinjiang. She has actively participated in co-sponsoring bills aimed at sanctioning individuals accused of human rights violations in these regions. Additionally, Harris frequently speaks out about the human rights situation in China and commits to prioritizing this issue in her foreign policy if elected president. In contrast, Donald Trump tends to prioritize economic interests over human rights issues in relations with China. His approach often changes depending on the trade situation between the two countries. Although Trump has publicly condemned human rights violations in China, he also often appears reluctant to apply sanctions, concerned that this could negatively affect trade negotiations. This contradiction in Trump's approach to human rights issues in China reflects his prioritization of short-term economic interests over long-term human rights values. D. On building alliances. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have different approaches to building alliances in the Indo-Pacific region. Harris values consolidating and strengthening alliance relationships, especially with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. She actively participates in meetings with leaders in the region, emphasizing the importance of cooperation to address common challenges, including the rise of China. In contrast, Trump's policy is often seen as unilateral and unpredictable. He pays less attention to building strong alliances and focuses on short-term benefits for the U.S. This approach risks weakening traditional U.S. alliances, while potentially creating space for China to expand its influence in the region. Based on the above analysis, let's evaluate the overall impact of these two approaches on the future of U.S.-China relations and the position of the U.S. on the international stage. Impact on U.S.-China relations. Harris's approach seems likely to lead to a more stable U.S.-China relationship, focusing on dialogue and multilateral cooperation. However, this may be seen as lacking firmness by those who support a stronger stance towards China. Meanwhile, Trump's approach could lead to short-term tensions and instability, but could also create significant changes in U.S.-China relations, especially in the areas of trade and economy. Influence on U.S. foreign policy. Harris's policy has the potential to strengthen the U.S. position on the international stage through consolidating alliances and emphasizing values such as human rights and democracy. However, this may face opposition from supporters of the America First policy. Conversely, Trump's policy could weaken traditional U.S. alliances, but may be welcomed by supporters of economic nationalism. C. Impact on the global economy. Harris's approach could lead to a more stable economic environment, facilitating international trade and investment. However, this may not be sufficient to address pressing issues, such as the trade deficit with China. Trump's policy, while potentially causing short-term instability, could lead to fundamental changes in the global trade structure and may address some of the issues the U.S. faces in its economic relationship with China. Both Harris and Trump recognize the importance of the U.S.-China relationship and the need to address challenges from China. However, their approaches differ significantly. Harris tends to pursue a multilateral policy, emphasizing alliance building and promoting values such as human rights. Meanwhile, Trump tends to pursue a unilateral policy and focus on economic and trade issues. Both approaches have their own strengths and limitations. Harris's approach may lead to a more stable international environment, but could be seen as lacking firmness. Conversely, Trump's approach could create significant changes in U.S.-China relations, but may also lead to tensions and instability. Ultimately, the choice between Harris's ambiguity or Trump's madness in China policy will depend on American voters' assessment of the challenges facing the country and the best way to address them. Regardless of the election outcome, the U.S.-China relationship will certainly continue to be one of the most important issues in U.S. foreign policy in the coming years.